Nikola Tesla has undergone this explosion in popularity in recent years. You know, he was a character in a Christopher Nolan film, and he has really high-profile fans and a car manufacturer named after him. So it's likely that everyone's at least heard of Nikola Tesla, but they probably don't know much about his actual life or what he did. So the idea of doing a Doctor Who pseudo-historical piece in the vein of the Shakespeare Code or Unicorn and the Wasp about a more obscure but incredibly well-known historical figure is a bloody great idea. I keep joking about this relatively recent obsession that Doctor Who's developed with being educational and how that kind of takes precedence over the storytelling a lot of the time, but this is one of those cases where doing this actually makes a lot of sense given Tesla's retrospective cultural significance. Probably my favourite joke of the Jodie era so far is this one.
Tesla's lab. This is going to be something special. I won't lie. I was expecting more.
For all the mythologising that's been done about Tesla in the years since his life and death, what I love so much about the approach that Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror has taken to Tesla is playing up the companions and the Doctor's sense of disappointment at the reality of Tesla's life. He was a man ahead of his time, yes, but what that also means is he was a man out of place in his time. He was contending with lack of funding and public detractors. And that makes for an incredibly compelling story, and it's a very different story to the one that people like to tell each other about Tesla that paint him as this mysterious alien-like magician sort of character doing things that us mere mortals can only dream of. Which is a nice story, yes, and I love the fact they cast David Bowie to play Tesla in The Prestige as well. But there is a different, more down-to-earth, just flat-out humbler tale that you can tell when given the task of adapting Tesla for a piece of fiction. The writing can be a bit patchy in places, and the episode's kind of a victim of what a lot of historical pieces from last year were victims of, where it's essentially a very basic setup of let's introduce the companions to a famous historical figure and listen to the famous historical figure waffle about their life for a bit. But Goran Visnajic is so damn brilliant as Tesla, and Jodie throws so much enthusiasm into the subject that I just couldn't help but find their scenes together incredibly compelling. It's more how it's done than what it's doing that really stuck out to me. It's painting a picture of someone loved and appreciated in hindsight in a slightly similar way to Vincent and the Doctor, albeit nowhere near as well of course because that was a masterpiece. And similarly, Vincent and the Doctor, while it was commended for its painting a loving portrait of a historical figure, it was also criticised for having a bit of a crap monster. I don't agree with that criticism of Vincent and the Doctor personally. I think the monster did serve a purpose there, but that criticism is totally relevant in the Tesla episode, and while I enjoyed this episode a lot while watching it, my issues with it grew even more frustrating afterwards the more I thought about the trappings that the Tesla episode has fallen into and what it represents for the show as a whole. Okay, so Tesla finds an alien device and is stalked by zombie creatures. That's a perfectly fine premise on its own, but going from some incredibly compelling straight-faced historical dramatisation to a spaceship full of scorpion creatures is more than a bit jarring. And this again makes me come back to the question, what is wrong with having an episode that's just a pure historical? Why do we keep having to have historical episodes that always have to have a tacked on unnecessary alien subplot, when you could just do straight historical stuff and you'd probably get a much better reaction? In fact, doing pure historicals again just makes sense now that New Who seems to have opened up to the idea of being educational. You had Ada Lovelace and Noor Inayat Khan in Spyfall. You had an episode about Rosa Parks last year where the Doctor literally stops the episode to do a spider diagram on a whiteboard of facts that we know about Rosa Parks. All of this harks back to Doctor Who's original intent back in the early 60s when it was in pitching stage. The idea for it originally was an alien time traveller takes modern day people back in time to teach kids about history. Alright, if your idea is that you want to use Doctor Who as a means of teaching people history, do that, go for it, I'm 100% behind that. But what is the point in tacking on a shit alien subplot when it's not always necessary to do so? Is there some sort of BBC stipulation in place where every episode has to have a monster of some sort, even if the monster's crap and ruins it? The Moraks in The Witchfinders, definitely those. The Lion People in Women Who Lived. Well, it's Doctor Who, it has to have a dumb monster in it, doesn't it? But does it though? Really? Why? The entire point of changing doctors, companions and showrunners should be to refresh the show, to bring in fresh input. The series has a magic box that can go anywhere and do anything. Why not just do a straight historical piece every once in a while? Just for a change, you know? Instead of expecting ourselves to make basically the same episode over and over again and sticking to the same rigorous formula for no good reason. It's just very hard to take this episode seriously when it's half incredibly poignant portrait of an obscure historical figure and half incredibly generic Doctor Who versus Scorpion alien things that we've seen 1,000 fucking times. Hell, if we have to have alien stuff in this episode at all because pure historicals have cooties, just remove the Scorpion monsters and make it much more tonally consistent. Just have Nikola Tesla stumble across an alien device and have him and Edison fighting over who should get to keep it. The Doctor's not sure if either of them should have it because what if it breaks history, but Tesla ends up keeping it, but he doesn't do anything with it, he just studies it, because that's who Tesla was. He was a scientist, not a businessman. He was in it for the science. That's why Edison ended up being incredibly well known and Tesla was more obscure, because he wasn't in it to get famous and just stamp his name over everything. Doing that would actually make a lot more sense and tell your story in a more effective way than having Tesla being this humble, down-to-earth guy who's up against the snarling caricature of Edison, having Tesla's importance emphasised by the fact these aliens want Tesla over Edison, and then having the Doctor just saying what we can conclude from these events at the end of the episode. Look, I don't mean to sound so harsh about the Tesla episode. I really don't, because as said, I love these little scenes between Jodie and Tesla, and there's some wonderful little moments between Tesla and the companions, and its intent to tell a humbler version of the Tesla story is fucking gold. It just pissed me off the more I thought about it, because I'd love this episode to bits if it was allowed to be the intimate historical portrait that it clearly wanted to be. If they'd just removed the Scorpion people and spent more time fleshing out Tesla and Edison's rivalry, then this could have been a classic.